help, help, please. I'm downstairs.
Okay, who cut you?
This girl I was wanted to return to look at. I'm pregnant.
How far along are you?
7 months. She got me on my stomach.
Can you grab a towel or anything you can get in your hands and put it on your wound and press?
I'm bleeding out.
On March 18, 2015, two pregnant women meet in a Colorado apartment after connecting through a Craigslist ad for maternity clothes. But the encounter turns into a savage ambush, resulting in bloodshed and violence.
Did you have a C-section today?
No, she just came out.
Is there a probability that the baby won't match you?
No, she's mine.
The following is based on official police records, and most of the footage has never been seen before. At 2:30 p.m., Longmont 911 dispatchers receive a call from a woman struggling to remain conscious.
Green, please.
I can't understand the street.
Green, please.
Green place. Green like the color?
Yeah.
Tell me what happened.
She cut me.
Who cut you?
Downstairs. I don't know.
Okay, hold on.
Responded to.
Hang on. Hold on.
Please. I'm downstairs.
Okay, who cut you?
This girl I was wanted to return to look at.
What did she cut you with?
A knife. I'm pregnant. She got me on my stomach.
Okay.
I'm afraid.
She cut you in your stomach?
I'm pregnant.
Okay. What is the suspect's name?
I don't remember. I'm bleeding out.
I know you need to stay on the phone with me, okay? I'm getting everybody to you, okay?
With first responders on their way, the dispatcher tries desperately to keep her talking and collect vital information.
I need you to can you grab a towel or anything you can get in your hands and put it on your wound and press? How far along are you?
7 months.
7 months? Okay. Are you alone in the house?
I don't know.
You stay with me. Don't go to sleep. You stay with me. You're downstairs in the basement? And are you alone?
Yeah.
Okay.
I locked the door.
Don't you go to sleep, okay? You stay on the phone with me. Can you tell me, did she have any other weapons besides a knife?
She broke a glass.
She broke a glass? Did she stab you with the broken glass also?
Yeah.
Okay. You need to think real hard and tell me who it is that did this. Tell me the person's name. Think real hard, okay? Don't go to sleep. Stay with me. Tell me who it is.
I don't know. Help.
Everybody's on their way, okay?
Is that them?
Okay.
Are they ringing the doorbell? She cannot get to it.
Help.
Got everybody coming, okay? You hang with me. Don't hang up. Are they in the house yet?
She's downstairs?
Yeah, they're here.
Okay, I'll let you go.
A trail of blood and faint cries for help guide officers to the basement of an apartment, where they discover the victim, 26-year-old Michelle Wilkins, lying on a bed and clutching her lower abdomen. Close by, a broken bottle and blood-stained knife hint at a violent encounter. But her assailant, who she knows only as D, is nowhere to be found. Michelle tells officers that she's pregnant, but to their horror, it appears the baby may have been cut from her womb. She also appears to have been stabbed in the neck. They race Michelle in critical condition to Longmont Hospital, where moments earlier another woman had just entered clutching a newborn baby girl, claiming she had just given birth at home. The woman, 34-year-old Dynel Lane, and her fiancé Dave are tended to by hospital staff. But when officers at the crime scene realize they're standing inside Dynel's apartment, investigators move in to question her story.
I have my pants on, so I felt her coming out.
And how many babies have you had? 2? I heard you say daughters.
I have 2 daughters.
Okay.
By this point, Dynel's fiancé Dave had left the hospital to pick up Dynel's 2 daughters from school and wasn't present in the room.
So you're not sure how far along you were? Can you give a guess?
Honestly, I wish I could give you that answer. I think the first time I felt her move was in July or August. Just little flutterby's, but
And what are the cuts on your hand?
You know what? I don't know. I didn't even, when I came upstairs and she said that I cut my hand.
Okay. Okay, was anyone with you at your house today?
No, I've been by myself all day.
Okay.
Dynel's hand has several cuts, including one deep gash between her thumb and index finger.
Why don't you let them look at that and you don't have to put the baby down, just one hand at a time. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Are you bleeding badly?
I don't think so.
And you said you're not sure how that happened?
Yeah,
Okay. Looks like you may need some stitches, and I'm not even a doctor.
You need some stitches, sweetie. So you don't know how you got these big cuts?
no.
Those are some pretty big cuts.
Given Dynel's claims she just gave birth, an obstetrician enters for a routine checkup.
Can I just feel your uterus? I just want to make sure. I'm one of the OB doctors, Dr. Nelson. I just want to make sure.
So I'm going to put your head
I
down.
just want to look and see if you're having any bleeding, okay?
I don't want to.
You don't have to let her go.
So what time did you have the baby?
I'm sorry. I don't remember what time it was.
Have you done any blood work yet?
Not yet. She won't let us start an IV or something yet.
Once she declines the exam, investigators waste no time confronting Dynel with what they know.
Okay, Dynel, I've got a problem. There was a young girl in the apartment, and she was cut because we've got officers there right now.
At my house?
Yes. Do you know how that happened?
I don't. There wasn't anybody there when I left.
Okay.
It was just me and my husband when we left.
Okay. Any chance that your girls were there?
No. They've been at school all day.
Okay. You don't know anything about the woman that was in your apartment?
No, I don't.
Okay.
There wasn't anybody there.
Police on scene locate Michelle's phone, the screen cracked and splattered with blood. Text messages exchanged between the two women suggest Michelle was planning to meet her to pick up clothes and arrived at her home around 11:51 a.m.
Well, unfortunately, I'm trying to figure some things out.
Okay.
And I'm going to need some help to do it.
Okay.
But I'm going to tell you right now, things just aren't adding up. Because the young woman in your apartment has been injured very badly.
Okay.
I asked if you had any visitors today because we got a call to your apartment. When we got to your apartment, we found a young lady who had been cut open. Okay? She had a baby
Okay.
in her stomach that had been cut out. Okay? That woman was transferred here,
Okay.
and she arrived here probably a few minutes after you did by ambulance.
Hospital staff met with Michelle's boyfriend, providing him with an update on her current condition.
Okay. So it sounds like we've got where they just finished up in the operating room and they're taking her to the ICU. Okay. Which means they've got her, they found a way to get the bleeding stopped. Okay. The surgeon will be able to tell you what all they did and what they had to fix and everything like that. But she made it to surgery just fine. She likely will still have the breathing tube in that I put in and be breathing for her, okay? Just because she's so sick, okay? She lost a lot of blood.
Can I see her?
It's there. I know they're going to get her, she's going to go from the operating room through recovery to the ICU, so it's going to be a little bit to get her stabilized and all that. But I think as soon as they can, they'll let you see her.
What the fuck happened?
That's why these guys are here.
Was she just physically assaulted?
She was also sick. Yeah.
Was she like sexually assaulted?
Oh, that I don't know.
By this point, the authorities were still piecing together the details themselves. However, the circumstances were enough to suspect the infant belonged to Michelle, and the newborn girl was separated from Dynel and kept under police watch.
Is it your wife or your girlfriend? How long have you been dating?
Well, we've been friends for like 8 years. And then in August at a friend's wedding, we hooked up. He was living in North Carolina at the time, and we talked about it. And decided to try raising a kid together.
Are you advertising to sell anything online?
So we were looking for various furniture. We had a lot of decorating to do.
Right.
And she has been doing Craigslist stuff.
With Michelle on a breathing tube and unable to answer questions, investigators turn to Dynel for answers. Despite the growing evidence against her, Dynel continues to claim that the baby she brought to the hospital is her own.
Is there anything truthful right now you want to tell me, Dynel?
I don't know what's going on, sir. I really wish I did. I'm just about as confused as you guys are.
When were you due? What's your due date?
We haven't been able to go to the doctor. It's been such a mess.
Do you have an approximate time? Like what month?
I wish I could tell you.
Did you have a C-section today or just regular delivery?
No, she came out. She just came out.
Vaginal?
Yeah.
Okay. But that was at your house?
Felt like, I mean, it just, I can't even explain it. It just, that was
Pretty quick event?
I mean, I walked up the stairs. I think I was halfway up the top stairs when she came out.
Was your husband home at the time, or?
He was on his way home, and he walked in the door. I don't know.
Back at the apartment, Dave pulled up in a silver sedan, only to find a strong police presence. Officers noted Dave had a large blood smear on the back of his right hand and spots of blood on his clothes. He told officers he arrived home at around 2:15 p.m. to take Dynel to a prenatal checkup. According to his statement, he explained he made it to the last basement step before Dynel appeared covered in blood, stating she had just given birth. After finding the baby upstairs in the bathtub, he raced the two to the hospital, never knowing he was one step away from the horrors police would soon find in the basement. Back at the hospital, investigators discussed the situation out of Dynel's earshot.
I knew things didn't add up when she said she got the baby last July.
She's got pictures on Facebook. They're saying she's pregnant last March. Like a year ago, March, right?
Dynel's Facebook page, which lists her as an assistant manager at Once Upon a Child, contains several photos of Dynel, who appears pregnant as early as March of 2014. Officers also found registries on the bump and pregnancy corner stating her due date in November. Based on this information, officers conclude she would have a 4 or 5 month-old baby by now.
So you know that the blood tests are really going to confirm or deny exactly what's going on?
Yeah, that's what she said.
And if there is something, like I said, there's something strange right now is the best time to admit to what may have happened before the tests come back, because if that happens, it's probably going to look a little bad and a little more worse for you, you know? Is there a probability that the DNA for the baby won't match you?
No, she's mine.
However, Michelle is still unconscious and fitted with a breathing tube. Whether investigators will hear her side of the story depends entirely on her survival. The detective makes it clear to Dynel where the investigation stands at this point.
I just spoke with the nurse. You don't appear as if you just had a baby. You have a large cut on your hand that you can't explain. And we have a lot of stuff that went on over at your house that we can't explain.
Okay.
I don't believe that's your baby. And I need to find that out.
As a DNA test threatens to bring the truth to light, Dynel braces to tell her story. However, what she reveals is nowhere near what anyone expected to hear.
I put an ad on Craigslist for some maternity clothes that I had that don't fit because I had gotten a lot bigger and they just didn't fit.
The ad offered the items for free. Dynel explained that Michelle was one of many who responded and that she came to the house this morning to pick them up.
And we stood there and we talked about my kids and we talked about just anything. I mean, I don't know. I don't really get to talk to anybody during the day, so it was kind of nice to talk to somebody. And then the doorbell rang.
Dynel explains that the mailman arrived with a package containing essential oils that she was planning to sell, which she opened with a knife. Afterward, she showed Michelle some baby clothes, but Michelle wasn't interested.
I asked her, I said, I have an extra baby bag thing. I said, do you need one? And she said, let me look at it first. She said she didn't want it. And I was like, okay, well, she's like, well, I need to go. I was like, okay. So I turned around and before I knew it, she had, I think it was a knife that I had opened my box with that had been sitting on the counter. Mm-hmm. That's, I think, how I cut my hand. But she came at me and I just kind of reacted, and then we ended up in my daughter's room and she just kept trying to hit me. And I asked her, I was like, what are you doing? I'm like, stop. And I mean, defending myself, I was grasping at her and she was grasping at me. And like, I finally had gotten to the point where I had her down and I'm like, just stop. And she was just flailing, but she wouldn't stop. Like, and it just seemed like every time I would kind of get leverage, she would come at me again. She kept trying to punch me and she was like trying to bite me.
What happened next?
I think I choked her.
It wasn't until the following day that officers observed injuries to Michelle's neck, which had not been visible when she was first found. It appeared as though Michelle had been severely strangled.
It was a struggle. It was a big struggle. And I was yelling. I was trying to maybe get my neighbors to hear me. And I was trying to grab for her phone, but she, I think, had a lock on it. I'm not sure, but I was like, I need to call 911. And I strangled her because she wouldn't stop.
Okay.
Was she saying anything to you?
I don't remember. I don't think so. She wouldn't stop.
Do you have any other injuries on your person besides your hand? Yeah. Why do you think your hand is so swollen? Did you hit something or?
I think I hit her back, and I'm not sure if I hit her in the wall when I was laying on the bed and she was over me and she was trying to hit me, but she wasn't hitting me. Like, during the struggle, I think we kind of flipped over and I was on her.
Dynel goes on to reveal the horrifying decision that followed.
After she stopped moving, I got scared and I started thinking about the baby. I thought I killed her. I was like, I killed this woman. They always tell you not to do things by yourself on Craigslist, but I didn't. It was a pregnant woman. I didn't think anything of it. I thought I killed her, and I didn't want the baby to die too. I'm not this kind of person. I don't do stuff like this. Like, I didn't know what to do.
We're not judging you, Dynel.
I know. I'm judging myself. What do you do in a situation like that? Like, I reacted. I got the knife that she had, and I tried to get the baby out.
Okay, is that the baby that's in the other room?
That's her baby.
Okay.
She's not mine. She's not mine.
Okay.
Following the critical admission that the child was not in fact her own, she reveals what happened next.
The girl was moaning and she was crying. No, she wasn't crying. She was just making like breathing sounds. And I got scared.
Okay. Where'd you put the baby when you took the baby upstairs?
In the bathtub. It was empty. I just sat her in there.
Okay. Okay, so she was moaning and making some noise.
I know I should have said something then, but I didn't. I just got scared. I just left her there.
Okay, and when your husband came in, what happened?
Oh, the baby was in the bathtub.
Whose baby did he think it was?
Ours.
Are you pregnant? Did he think you've been pregnant?
I wanted to tell him so bad. I was pregnant.
When were you pregnant?
Downtown April 1st last year.
Okay.
But it was his first baby. And I never thought I could have another one after I lost my son.
Dynel shares that her son passed away 12 years ago when he was just 18 months old, the details of which will later come to light.
My girls had been through so much. I wanted to just another lost baby. I felt like it was my fault. I didn't go to the doctor, and I didn't tell him that I lost a baby.
What was your plan?
I don't know. I was going to tell him so many times, and he'd ask me, what was going on, and everybody was confused.
What were they confused about?
Just why it was taking so long.
Detectives began speaking with people close to Dynel to get more information about her pregnancy and behavior leading up to the attack. One friend mentioned seeing her on the 4th of July weekend, 9 months before the attack.
And did she look pregnant?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. She had like a little belly. She had like just a little baby bump that was taken in June.
Investigators also spoke with Dynel's 2 teenage daughters, who at this point knew very little about the unfolding situation.
When was she due, you know? She was due first in December, and we moved it to November, and then she was back again. Could you tell that your mom was getting bigger and the baby was ready to come or anything? Not really. She was kind of slow for being pregnant.
Mom said she's going to have a little boy named James.
Dynel's family hosted a baby shower for little James in September of 2014, when Dynel would have been 7 or 8 months pregnant. The jungle-themed party featured a cake reading, "Welcome, James."
Was she pretty excited? Yeah. How about David? Was he excited? This was his first time. Being a father, so he was really excited.
But the excitement began to wane after Dynel's due date came and went. Still, she kept up the facade, telling her friend pregnancy has been such a nightmare, blaming doctors for incorrect due dates. In several messages to one woman, Dynel claimed to have already had the baby, stating it was a natural birth. Several photos of a baby boy were found on her cell phone, but investigators traced the image to a public website. However, by March 2015, nearly 4 months after she was supposed to give birth, she still appeared pregnant to Dave.
She just wouldn't tell me anything, and then she kept saying she set up appointments and stuff like that. Yeah. And we're ready to go, and then something would happen, and we wouldn't go. I was frustrated because I didn't know what was going on with the pregnancy. Sure. I thought there might have been something wrong with the baby or something wrong with her, and she wasn't telling me. And I was so stressed out because I'd ask her every other day, when can we go? Let's go to the emergency room right now. Yeah. Let's go check it out.
Pretty much throughout this whole year, he's been trying to get her to a doctor, and when she, every time it was a time for her to go, something would happen.
Dave describes one instance where he finally went with her to an appointment, but it didn't go as expected.
Yeah, and she didn't even sign and didn't even do anything. We're just sitting in this waiting room like fools, and people are looking at us like, people going in and going out, and we're just sitting there. Did that happen a lot? Or? It happened quite a few times. It happened at the salute place up here at least 3 times. There was a milestone at the hospital. We went there, and they were like, we don't even know who you are. You're not in our system. I mean, once you're just sitting there, what caused? She would get upset. She'd be like, we're not going to be seen. They don't want to help us. And throw a fit, and then we'd leave. She'd be like, I'm done with this. Let's go.
After they left the appointment, Dynel returned the same night, but this time, she went alone.
And they came back and showed me the wristband from the emergency room so that they could prove to me that she went. Yeah. And then she had a recording of a heartbeat on the phone, and she was like, this is our son's heartbeat. Really? And told me he was 128 beats a minute. This is it. And I listened to that thing for days. Yeah. And I was like, what's going on? Yeah. One thing I'd like to know is, if she was ever pregnant at any point in the last year.
The answer to Dave's question may remain unanswered, and a shocking revelation from one of her friends only deepens the mystery.
Did you ever know her to have any other miscarriages?
No. After all this has happened, I feel like we put a lot on her. And maybe it's just a friend feeling guilty, but we made this baby to be the miracle baby because she couldn't have the kids. You know what I mean? Died, she wanted another one and she couldn't, she was fixed.
You knew she had she was fixed?
Mm-hmm.
One of her 2 ex-husbands, Chris, also shared this claim with investigators.
Did you guys ever talk about having kids?
No, because right off the bat, she told me that her tubes were tied, so.
She told you right off the bat?
Yeah, a couple weeks in or whatever, but.
After you were married or when you were?
Just still dating.
Okay.
Yeah, and she told me about her son that she lost with her previous ex-husband and everything.
Okay.
Jason, her first ex-husband and the father of her 2 daughters, shared what happened to their son and how the loss impacted Dynel.
He drowned in a pond. It was at their grandparents' house, and she just lost track of him, and he wandered out into the back. And
Dynel lost track of him?
Yeah.
Okay, and it was.
She was there with them. I was out picking up a swing set with her dad.
Okay.
And she lost track of him, and he wandered out into the backyard pond and fell in there. And she found him, tried to do CPR.
Okay.
But we ended up losing him. He was 18 months old.
How'd Dynel take that?
She took it hard.
Took it hard.
She took it hard. I tried to be as supportive as I could during that time, but you know, if that's a mother losing a child,
Yeah, totally.
It's gonna mess with her.
Did you notice a real change in her?
To be honest with you, yeah. I mean, we ended up divorced.
In her interview with investigators, Dynel admitted to having the procedure.
Girl stabbed me to get my tubes tight because he didn't want any more children. And it was a few months after that my son died.
The weirdest thing was she said it sucked that like her tubes were tight because we would have such a cute baby, and that was about it. But after we broke up, I know she like told my one friend Selena that she had a miscarriage while we were together, and I was like, how is that even possible? Like her tubes are tied. So
how long did you know her before then, before you got married?
Maybe like 4 months. It was kind of a stupid, just real quick. We thought we were in love. Yeah.
Well, love is blind.
Yeah.
That was the best of us.
Hey, I'm glad it didn't work out.
Jason explains he learned about what happened when his daughter posted about it on Facebook, leaving him concerned with how much the girls know regarding the situation with their mother.
You know, I don't know how much they know now. I would guess they know a fair amount based on just all the media coverage. A lot of it's out in the press. Some of it, like I said, is not totally accurate. Some of it's more accurate. The general story, everyone knows the general story.
She did show up in the hospital though.
Dynel?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she was contacted at the hospital.
All right, and then the other story, part of the story that I want to confirm is she actually did remove the fetus from the mother?
That's what it looks like.
During questioning, investigators didn't disclose what happened to either teenager. The oldest was understandably confused, having just returned from school to find police at her house.
I want to know what's going on. Why was the house blocked off? Right. It's not what you're expecting, right? Mom said she has a baby and now the house is blocked off. It doesn't seem to go together.
It's clear the experience left a deep mark as Dynel's oldest daughter struggled to hold back tears in the interview room. The youngest was left confused, writing in a statement, "This whole thing is pretty weird. I just wish I knew what is happening. I just want to go home and have a normal life again." In addition to speaking with family and friends, investigators attempted to get information from Dynel's co-workers at Once Upon a Child, but the manager confirmed she's never been employed with any of their stores.
Never had anything like this ever happen to me. I've never, even in school, I never hit anyone. Why would somebody do that to you? I mean, I just don't understand. Like, I know it looks so much worse on my part because I had to defend myself. And then if I did something really bad, I need to go to jail. I've always been that person. I thought about that for everybody else, and I never thought it would ever have to be me. But
well, what should happen to the other lady? You think?
I don't know.
Do you think she's a guilty person for what happened, or is she more of an innocent person?
I don't know.
Can I ask you a question? You described it one way. I'm just going to play devil's advocate for a minute, okay? Could you have possibly felt the need to have a child, and because of such, you went after her?
No, I didn't. Honestly, I've been wanting to tell my husband that I wasn't pregnant for quite a while. It was just kind of trying to find the words to tell him.
So why would you tell your baby upstairs?
I think it was just kind of like a moment's reaction, and I didn't know what to do.
Dave would later reveal an important detail to police that may shed light on Dynel's decision. For now, Dynel finally asks about Michelle's condition.
You know what happened to her.
So I do know she's out of surgery, whether it be stitched up or I don't know how bad she was and things like that.
Is she alive?
Yes, she's
alive. Oh.
Well, last that I know.
I'm glad she's okay. I hope she's okay.
Against all odds, Michelle survived the brutal attack. Nearly 2 weeks later, still recovering from her injuries, she sat down with detectives to deliver an emotional account of the horrors she endured in that basement on March 18th.
Can tell which rooms are for the suspects and which are for the victims. Actually, I interview my suspects in this room. Really? Mm-hmm. Make them more comfortable. Yes. It works. How are you feeling today? I don't know. It's so unreal. I had a lot of vivid dreams. And I just woke up a lot last night. It's like some nights I sleep all the way through and sometimes wake up a lot. Working through that. It's going to take time. It's not one of those things you get over right away. You'll probably never get over it. You'll get through it.
I had, I had a panic attack afterwards, and, really late at night, and, scared the crap out of me. So,
how's he doing?
It's hard to say because, a lot of his energy is dedicated towards, helping me in a lot of ways, but it's, I really want him to come to therapy because it's, both of us. This happened to both of us.
Michelle begins by explaining what happened when she first arrived at Dynel's apartment.
So when I got there, I didn't really have anything to do. There wasn't a rush, and she talked about how, kind of lonely she was because her daughters would get home from school and didn't want to hang out, and her husband
She referred to him as husband a lot.
Okay. Yeah, so her husband would, go to the gym right after he got home work really late, so she kind of, it sounded lonely, and, every time I was kind of oh, well, I'm gonna go do this, and she would just keep talking, so I was just maybe she's just like that, she's just lonely.
When you're talking, did she say she was pregnant? Or
yeah, she said it was due any day now, and she, had a belly. I thought she looked really small. When I saw her, I thought, man, she's skinny to be, over 9 months pregnant. She said it was due, March 3rd, and that was late, so it was supposed to come any time. She was asking me, if I needed anything. And I said, that we pretty much had it, all we needed was a crib.
When you talked about having a girl, do you remember what she said?
I just remember her kind of saying nice things about having girls. She's had 2, and I think she started talking about her girls and how much I think she said something to the effect of that she liked girls better, that it was yeah. I just remember her saying positive things about girls, but I don't remember specifically what she said.
Okay. When you guys were talking, were you down in the entryway? Were you upstairs?
Sure, upstairs, standing. We had gone to the bedroom, and we had gone through the clothes, and she took out stuff she thought would be too big for me, and then put it all in a plastic bag.
Things took a dark turn when Michelle made the decision to leave.
Eventually, I just started walking towards the door, and that's when the door was open. I just feel like such an idiot for not leaving then.
Don't beat yourself up over it.
Right there. You're right at the door. She actually closed it in front of me and said, oh, I think I have some stuff for you downstairs. She reached over in front of me and closed the door. Let me show you some stuff downstairs. And I think I have some girl clothes.
She followed Dynel into the basement, unaware that she would soon be fighting for her life.
She actually looked like she was rummaging through some stuff to find stuff. Yeah, so that's when she was kind of looking through stuff. And I sort of just started backing out at that point. I was no, I really don't need anything. And so I just started walking out instead of leaving. But it's really nice for you, thanks for letting me see your lovely home.
This is when Michelle attempted to leave for a second time.
So you went back toward the stairs, and she was still behind you?
Yeah.
Do you remember where you were standing when she first hit you in the chest?
She hit me from behind.
She hit her from behind. Okay.
And I asked her, I thought it's there was a spider on me or something, because she hit me really hard with the flat of her palm as I was going up the stairs.
Okay.
And that's when I was did I have a spider on me? And she said, I think I got it. And she pulled my sweater and swung me around facing the other direction and started lifting up my sweater really roughly and I was what the hell is on my back, and I was just turned around and was hey, what are you doing? And she was you hit me, this is my house, what are you doing? And I was just I thank you for the baby clothes, I don't want to hurt you, I just want to leave. And that's when she started saying that she wanted to call the cops and trying to shove me into the bathroom.
And you didn't get into the bathroom at all?
No, I was and that's when I kind of resisted with my body and was the whole situation was just fucking bizarre. I didn't do anything, I just wanted to leave.
Michelle's story is corroborated by what she told dispatchers in her 911 call. as she struggled to maintain consciousness following the attack.
Were you having a fight?
I was leaving.
You were just trying to leave?
While Michelle's recollection is fuzzy after that, evidence indicates she was strangled and bashed over the head with a glass lava lamp. During her first hospital interview, she recalled Dynel saying, "If you love me, you'll let me do this," before stabbing her in the neck with a broken edge of the lava lamp. Then, Michelle lost consciousness. It was after this that Dynel took a knife and began performing a procedure known as a cesarean section. A doctor who examined Michelle's wound at the hospital told investigators it was well performed, and to achieve the level of accuracy, one would have to have researched the procedure. While no such research was found on her phone or laptop, it's worth mentioning that Dynel was a former certified nursing assistant. Blood smeared on the washer and dryer, as well as glass shards found inside the washing machine, indicated Dynel attempted to clean up the crime scene before her fiancé Dave arrived home unexpectedly. According to his written statement, Dynel called him to see if he'd left work yet and asked him to go run an errand at her daughter's school. She sounded out of breath, so he made the decision to go home and check on her, only to find her covered in blood, claiming to have just given birth at home. They left for the hospital, which provided Michelle the opportunity to call for help.
Ready to be done? Okay. It's hard to get over. It's like the one thing I kept asking, like the whole time it was happening, it was just like, why?
Investigators learned that Dave's suspicions had reached a breaking point. Dave confided in a friend who shared his concerns with his wife, Kimberly. She then posted the information to a Facebook group, stating that Dynel's whole pregnancy has been sketchy, adding that she's several months overdue and refusing to go to the doctor. The post caught the attention of a bereavement doula named Elizabeth, who stated this is a red flag, adding that if she's desperate, she may do the unmentionable and harm the mother and take the baby. Iwu reached out to Elizabeth, who told us she was kicked out of the Facebook group for suggesting this outcome was a possibility. 1 month following the Facebook post, Dynel told a friend she wanted to meet her roommate who was pregnant and stopped by their house. However, the roommate wasn't home. It's unclear if she'd been actively searching for a victim at the time. However, one thing was certain: Dynel's time was running out. She messaged a friend on Facebook in late February, revealing that Dave was ready to call it quits.
I gave her an ultimatum. I was like, by the 1st of March, I want to go to a doctor's appointment with you. And if that doesn't happen, then I don't know if I can do this anymore.
In a series of text messages between Dave and a man named John, he writes, "She's been lying to me. She has an appointment, and if I don't go to this one and find out what the hell is going on, she's gone." The appointment, which her daughter believed was to induce a labor, was set for March 16th, but was missed and rescheduled for the afternoon of March 18th. That morning, Dynel lured Michelle to her home, viciously attacked her, and stole her baby. She then brought the premature baby girl to the hospital, but the infant showed no signs of life. Michelle and her boyfriend were briefly reunited with their daughter, who weighed just over 3 pounds, and named her Aurora. 34-year-old Dynel Lane was charged with multiple counts, including first-degree attempted murder, 2 counts of first-degree assault with a deadly weapon causing serious bodily injury, 2 counts of second-degree assault causing injury with a deadly weapon, and unlawful termination of pregnancy in the first degree. She entered a plea of not guilty, but was ultimately found guilty of all charges at her trial in February 2016 and sentenced to 100 years in prison. She's currently serving her sentence at the Denver Women's Correctional Facility in Colorado.
June of 2015 in Claremont County, nearly 100 miles away. A massive fire destroyed a residential investment property owned by Paul Hicks, while Paul possessed an alibi, claiming to be in a hotel hours away for his railroad job, the Homes. Surveillance system, preserved in a fireproof safe, captured the arsonists. The video depicted a man and a woman clad in protective suits pouring gasoline throughout the residence. The woman's face and long, curly blonde hair were clearly visible as she looked directly into the camera. Paul immediately identified the female arsonist as his ex-girlfriend, Kelly, with whom he was Engaged in a bitter child custody battle, Kelly was subsequently arrested on an outstanding warrant. However, a meticulous civil investigation led by insurance attorney Zach McCune and local detectives revealed a shocking conspiracy. A forensic analysis of cellular records demonstrated that the hundreds of harassing calls Paul claimed to have received from Kelly were actually generated using an online spoofing service. Furthermore, investigators traced the purchase of a custom-printed latex mask of Kelly's face and a matching wig to a woman associated with Paul. The evidence demonstrated that Paul had orchestrated the burning of his own home, utilizing an accomplice wearing a custom mask to frame his ex-girlfriend and secure an insurance payout. The civil court subsequently ruled in favor of the insurance company, ordering a $400,000 judgment against Paul, while criminal charges of insurance fraud were filed. The exposure of Paul's calculated deception in the arson case prompted the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation to reopen the Regina Hicks murder investigation. Investigators recognized a clear pattern of extreme control, domestic abuse, and elaborate manipulation of the legal system. The renewed inquiry gained significant public attention through an investigative podcast produced by Ashley Ford, which focused on the unresolved murder and highlighted the role of Paul's close friend, Stephen Gates, the public pressure, and the active BCI investigation ultimately prompted Gates to consult with legal counsel and seek an immunity agreement. Confronted by investigators, Gates delivered a comprehensive confession. He revealed that on the night of the murder, Regina had indeed arrived at his property to retrieve Montana, where she engaged in a violent argument with Paul. In the driveway, Gates claimed he retreated to his barn, and when he emerged, he found Regina unconscious in the passenger seat of her Camaro. Paul informed Gates that Regina was dead and threatened him, asserting that Gates was now an accomplice. Terrified, Gates followed Paul as he drove Regina's Camaro to the rural pond and operated the vehicle into the water, leaving her to drown. Gates then drove Paul back to his residence. With Gates's eyewitness testimony secured, Paul Hicks was arrested in April of 2025 and charged with the murder and kidnapping of Regina. The subsequent trial featured emotional testimonies from Regina's family and friends, who detailed the years of emotional abuse she had endured. The defense highlighted the lack of physical forensic evidence, but the jury was profoundly moved by the pattern of behavior and Gates's detailed account. Following a brief deliberation, the jury found Paul Hicks guilty of murder and kidnapping. He was sentenced to life in prison, bringing a definitive end to a 24-year mystery and providing long-awaited justice for Regina and her surviving family. Introduction: The Pursuit of Truth. The human heart is capable of profound devotion, but it is also susceptible to the quiet, corrosive elements of greed, jealousy, and the desire for control. When these darker impulses take root, they often manifest in deeds of shocking coldness. Yet, against the shadows cast by such actions, there exists a Persistent and quiet force, the dedication of local investigators, forensic scientists, and communities that refuse to let the memory of the lost fade into obscurity. This narrative explores 4 distinct accounts of tragedy and the relentless pursuit of justice that followed. In each case, a life of value was taken by someone who believed they could orchestrate the perfect deception, whether through the deletion of a telephone record, the fabrication of a custom latex mask, the quiet footsteps tracked by a virtual fence, or a children's book written to mask a sinister betrayal. The truth eventually found its way to the light. These are stories not merely of crime, but of the patience, intellect, and empathy required to restore balance to a fractured world. Book 1: The Silent Firefighter. Chapter 1: A Cold Night in Evansville. The city of Evansville, Indiana, is situated along the scenic bends of the Ohio River. It is a place where neighborhoods are defined by their quiet streets, where families know their neighbors, and where the local first responders are regarded with deep respect. On a cold night, the stillness of this community was shattered by an event that would linger in the minds of its residents for years to come. Robert Dorr, known affectionately to all as Robbie, was a man who dedicated his life to the service of others. For 28 years, he had served as a leader within the local fire department. He was the kind of man rookies looked up to, a patient instructor, a reliable colleague, and a person who gave 110% on every single emergency call. His father had been a firefighter before him, making his service a continuation of a proud family tradition. To supplement his income and provide for his family, Robbie also worked a second job as a manager at a local restaurant. On this particular evening, Robbie had just completed a grueling 12-hour shift at the fire department. His wife, Elizabeth, who went by the name Becky, was at home preparing dinner. By her own account, it had been a perfectly normal day. She had spent the afternoon cleaning their house on Oakley Street and doing some routine shopping at a neighborhood department store and a grocery store. As evening fell, she was in the kitchen preparing thick-cut pork chops and macaroni and cheese, awaiting her husband's return. Through the kitchen window, Becky saw the headlights of Robbie's truck pull into the driveway. She did not see the vehicle itself, only the bright beams reflecting against the cold Indiana night. Within a minute of his arrival, the quiet of the neighborhood was punctured by a rapid succession of 4 or 5 sharp popping sounds. To the neighbors, the sounds were instantly recognizable as gunshots. Several urgent calls to 911 were placed within moments. Among the callers was Becky herself, her voice trembling as she spoke to the dispatcher. She reported that her husband's headlights had just pulled into the driveway, followed immediately by the sound of popping. When the dispatcher asked if she could see the assailant, Becky responded that she saw no one, only her husband, lying on the ground surrounded by blood. A heavy police presence descended upon Oakley Street. The first responding officers arrived to find a chaotic scene. Robbie was lying on the cold concrete of his driveway, still possessing a faint pulse. An officer immediately retrieved a medical kit and began chest compressions in a desperate attempt to keep his heart pumping. Despite their frantic efforts, Robbie's injuries were too severe. He was pronounced deceased at the scene. Chapter 2. The Web on the Whiteboard. The news of Robbie Doerr's death sent shockwaves through the Evansville Fire Department. Firefighters arrived at the scene in disbelief, some crying out in grief as they realized that one of their own had been taken in such a violent manner. The police officers on the scene recognized the gravity of the situation. They had to secure the area and treat the investigation with absolute meticulousness, setting aside their personal grief to focus on the task at hand. The initial assessment of the crime scene yielded very little physical evidence. The investigators found no cartridge casings in the immediate vicinity of the driveway. They did, however, locate a single damaged projectile in the roadway. It was a fragment of lead, but without the casing, it offered few immediate answers. At police headquarters, the detectives established what they referred to as a war room. In the center of a large whiteboard, they placed a photograph of Robbie Doerr. From that central point, they began to draw arrows outward to the people closest to him, his wife Becky, his children, his friends, and his colleagues. The objective was to analyze every relationship, searching for any friction that could lead to such an extreme act of violence. Robbie's daughter, Lindsay, and his stepchildren were devastated. Lindsay spoke of her father as her best friend, the person she would call in moments of distress. The idea that someone would want to harm a man who spent his life saving others seemed incomprehensible. When asked if Robbie had any enemies, those who knew him insisted he had none. He was a protector, not a man of conflict. However, as the detectives began to look closer at the inner circle, the facade of a perfect domestic life began to show signs of strain. In the days following the murder, the police obtained a search warrant for Robbie's home. Among his personal belongings, they discovered a handwritten note from Robbie addressed to Becky. The note spoke of significant problems within their marriage. It referenced feelings of insecurity, trust issues, and allegations of infidelity. The detectives learned that Robbie had begun to question his wife's behavior. He had expressed concern to close confidants that Becky was overly protective of her cellular phone, frequently deleting her text messages and preventing him from seeing her device. The financial aspect of their marriage had also created substantial tension. Shortly after their wedding, Becky had purchased a brand new vehicle and a new sectional sofa. The household expenses had mounted quickly, leaving Robbie to borrow as much as his credit limits would allow. While Becky had remained at home, Robbie was working multiple jobs to keep up with the financial strain. Chapter 3. The Hand Cannon and the Deleted Call. A breakthrough in the investigation came from an unexpected source: the autopsy. The forensic pathologist who examined Robbie's body recovered several projectiles. When the ammunition was analyzed by a firearms expert, they discovered an unusual mixture of projectiles. There were jacketed bullets, lead, ball projectiles, and plastic wadding. The expert concluded that the ammunition had likely been fired from a very specific and unique weapon known as a Taurus judge.
This particular revolver is
often referred to as a hand cannon because of its ability to chamber and fire both traditional handgun cartridges and shotgun shells from the same cylinder. The use of such an uncommon weapon provided the detectives with a distinct lead. They began checking local records for any recently reported thefts of a Taurus
judge.
They discovered that such a weapon had been stolen from a local pawn shop called River City Pawn. Upon investigating the employees of the pawn shop, the detectives came across a name that connected directly to Becky's family, Larry Richmond Jr. Larry Richmond Jr. was a young man with no prior criminal record who had recently begun working at the pawn shop. When the detectives printed his photograph and placed him on their whiteboard, they uncovered a social media post showing Larry Jr. with a Taurus judge resting in his lap. He had sent the photograph to friends, seemingly showing off the stolen weapon. The connection grew stronger when the detectives looked at Larry Jr.'s father, Larry Richmond Sr. When they ran his criminal history, the investigators were startled to find that Larry Sr. was on probation for a previous murder. He had pled guilty to knowingly killing a person when he was just 17 years old, serving 20 years in prison before his release. Larry Richmond Sr. was currently in a romantic relationship and living with Becky's younger sister, Amanda, who is known as Mandy. The families lived relatively close to one another, and they had recently begun socializing together, even attending double dates. Mandy had introduced Larry Sr. to her family, but out of a desire to protect him from judgment, she had not disclosed his criminal past to them. Armed with this information, the detectives turned their attention back to the cellular phone records of those involved. Through a forensic download of Becky's phone, they identified a deleted telephone call that had occurred just 5 minutes before her 911 call on the night of the murder. While Becky had deleted the call from her device, the records held by the cellular service provider, Sprint, remained intact. The deleted call was from a telephone number belonging to Larry Richmond Sr. Chapter 4: The Interrogations. With multiple suspects now identified, the investigators decided to bring in Becky, Mandy, Larry Sr., and Larry Jr. for questioning simultaneously. This strategy was designed to prevent them from coordinating their stories and to allow detectives to compare their statements in real time. Larry Richmond Sr. cooperated initially, stating that he wanted no trouble due to his probation status. He claimed to have no knowledge of the shooting, asserting that his relationship with Robbie was friendly and limited to occasional social gatherings. Mandy was questioned about Larry Sr.'s whereabouts on the night of the murder. She insisted that he had been at home with her the entire evening. However, her demeanor was anxious, and she struggled to recall specific details about the timeline of that night. Larry Richmond Jr. was questioned about the stolen Taurus judge. He initially lied, claiming the weapon had gone missing before his employment began.
When
confronted with the pawn shop records and his own social media photographs, his narrative began to crumble. He eventually admitted to stealing the gun but denied any involvement in the murder. The most intense questioning was directed at Becky. Detective Blake Keene confronted her with the cellular phone records showing the deleted call from Larry Sr. just minutes before her husband was shot. Becky maintained that she did not recognize the phone number and could not recall the conversation. The detectives pressed her, pointing out the absurdity of her being able to recall the exact price of the pork chops she bought at the grocery store that day, while failing to remember a phone call she received moments before her husband was executed in her driveway. Eventually, Becky relented. She admitted that she had spoken to Larry Richmond
Sr.
She explained that she deleted the call because she was afraid people would suspect they were having an affair, though she adamantly denied any romantic involvement with him. The investigation took a dramatic turn when Larry Richmond Jr., facing significant prison time for the weapon theft, contacted the detectives again.
He
revealed that his father had hidden a collection of firearms at Mandy's residence. The detectives obtained neighbor surveillance footage showing Larry Richmond Sr. carrying a plastic container and a shovel behind the garage at Mandy's
house.
A search of the property led to the excavation of a fire pit, where investigators recovered several buried firearms. Although the actual murder weapon was not among them, the discovery of the hidden arsenal further implicated Larry Sr. Chapter 5: The Message and the Verdict. As the community mourned Robbie Dorr, his daughter Lindsay was tasked with sorting through the numerous condolence cards sent to the family. Among them, she found a card signed by her Aunt Mandy and Larry Sr.
Tucked inside the
card was a small, torn piece of notebook paper. On the paper, written in a hurried hand, were the words, "We need to talk," followed by Larry Sr.'s phone number. Lindsay felt an immediate sense of unease. She contacted the lead detective and handed over the note, which provided another piece of circumstantial evidence linking Larry Sr. to the household immediately following the crime. The motive for the crime became clearer as investigators looked into the financial arrangements Becky had made. Witnesses reported that on the very night of the murder, and again the following day at the fire station, Becky had inquired about Robbie's pension and life insurance policies.
To the
investigators, this immediate concern for financial gain, combined with her attempts to conceal her communication with Larry Sr., suggested a coordinated conspiracy. Further witness testimony from Larry Richmond Jr. revealed that his father had admitted to having a physical relationship with Becky, confirming the suspicions of an affair that Robbie had harbored before his death. In the face of this mounting evidence, the prosecutor filed charges of murder and conspiracy to commit murder against both Elizabeth Becky Fox Dorr and Larry Richmond Sr. Becky's trial was held first. The prosecution presented the timeline of the deleted phone call, the financial inquiries, and the testimony of the family members. The defense argued that the state's case was built entirely on circumstantial evidence and that there was no direct proof of a conspiracy to kill Robbie. After several hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of guilty on both counts. Becky was subsequently sentenced to 90 years in prison. Larry Richmond Sr.'s trial took place several months later. The prosecution presented the location data from his cellular phone, which placed him in the immediate vicinity of Robbie's home in the hours leading up to the shooting, during which time his phone had been powered off. The jury found him guilty of murder and he was sentenced to life in prison. For the family of Robbie Dorr, the convictions brought a sense of closure. Though the pain of his absence remained, the Evansville Fire Department honored his memory by dedicating their newest fire engine in his name, ensuring that his legacy of service would continue to protect the community he loved. Book 2: The Lake of False Faces. Chapter 1: The Midnight Inferno. In the quiet suburb of Goshen, Ohio, located on the outer fringes of Cincinnati, the peace of a summer night was broken by the sound of sirens. It was shortly after 1 o'clock in the morning when neighbors on a semi-rural road were awakened by a series of muffled popping sounds. Looking out their windows, they saw thick plumes of smoke and bright orange flames devouring a nearby ranch-style home. An urgent call to 911 was placed at approximately 1 o'clock and 35 minutes in the morning. When a local fire department arrived, they found the structure fully engulfed in flames. Fire was pouring from every door and window, illuminating the surrounding trees in a dramatic display of destructive energy. The firefighters immediately deployed their hoses, initiating an aggressive attack on the blaze. Because the fire occurred in the middle of the night, their primary concern was the potential presence of occupants inside the home.
2
Separate crews entered the burning structure to perform a primary search. As they crawled through the thick, black smoke, the search took an unexpected
turn.
In the living room, a firefighter's hand brushed against a heavy object on the floor, a 5-gallon gasoline can. A short distance away in one of the bedrooms, another firefighter discovered a second gasoline can. The presence of these accelerant containers made it immediately clear that this was not a typical accidental fire. The fire chief ordered the crews out of the building and requested the assistance of the local sheriff's office and the State Arson Investigation Unit. The homeowner was identified as Paul Hicks, a railroad foreman who worked for a major transportation company. When investigators contacted him, he was staying at a hotel in Bluffton, Ohio, more than 100 miles away, where he was working on a railway crossing project. Upon learning of the fire, Paul Hicks drove back to Goshen. He informed the investigators that he had recently installed a high-definition surveillance a camera system at the property. The system's digital video recorder had been placed inside a fireproof gun safe in the basement, raising hopes that the footage might have survived the extreme heat of the fire. Chapter 2: The Mask and the Wig. The gun safe performed its duty remarkably well. When the investigators opened the safe, They found the digital video recorder intact. They transferred the footage to their laboratory and began to review the recordings from the night of the fire. The surveillance cameras had captured the arrival of two individuals at approximately 1:14 in the morning. Both figures were clad in white protective suits, resembling Tyvek suits, designed to prevent the transfer of fibers and to protect the wearer from paint or chemicals. The larger figure, whom investigators believed to be a male, carried two large gasoline cans. The smaller figure, who appeared to be a female, possessed a highly distinctive physical feature: long, voluminous, curly blonde hair that hung loosely over her shoulders, completely exposed to the camera. As the pair walked through the house pouring gasoline, the female figure stopped directly beneath an infrared camera, looking up into the lens. Her face was clearly visible, showing a distinct nose, chin, and cheek structure. Upon viewing the footage, Paul Hicks immediately pointed the finger of suspicion at his ex-girlfriend, Kelly. He explained that they had been engaged in an extremely bitter custody dispute over their young son, and that Kelly had been harassing him relentlessly. Paul provided investigators with his cellular phone records from the night before the fire, showing that his device had received more than 90 consecutive phone calls from Kelly's number within a very short period. He also referenced a prior incident of vandalism at his home where a hot tub had been damaged, and claimed that the individual responsible possessed the same distinct hair and physical build as the female in the arson footage. Based on the outstanding warrant for the hot tub vandalism and the fresh allegations of arson, the local police established a custody exchange as a ruse to locate Kelly. When she arrived at a local grocery store parking lot to pick up her son, she was surrounded by officers and placed under arrest. At the police station, Kelly was in a state of absolute shock. She vehemently denied any involvement in the arson or the prior vandalism. She insisted that she had been asleep at her mother's home, located 35 minutes away at the time of the fire. When the investigators obtained the official records from Kelly's cellular service provider, they uncovered a startling discrepancy. Her actual phone records showed no outgoing calls to Paul's phone on the night of the fire. The 90-plus calls showing on Paul's phone had not originated from her device. Chapter 3: The Super Sleuth of Cincinnati. The investigation into the Goshen fire might have stalled had it not been for the involvement of Zachary McCune, an attorney representing the insurance company that carried the policy on Paul Hicks' home, in civil matters involving substantial property claims. Insurance companies conduct their own thorough investigations to rule out fraud before releasing funds. McCune met with Kelly, who was entirely cooperative. She voluntarily provided a sworn statement and handed over her cellular phone for forensic analysis. McCune's team verified that her location data placed her miles away from the fire scene. McCune began to focus on the technology used to generate the harassing phone calls on Paul's device. He suspected the use of a service known as a spoofing application, which allows a caller to disguise their actual telephone number and display any number of their choosing on the recipient's caller identification. Through legal subpoenas issued to the spoofing service provider, McCune's team obtained the actual originating telephone records. The analysis revealed that the 90-plus calls had indeed been generated by a spoofing application, and the account used to make those calls was linked to an Internet Protocol address associated with a cellular device in the possession of Paul Hicks himself. This discovery changed the trajectory of the case. It appeared that Paul Hicks had fabricated the harassment to frame his ex-girlfriend. The investigators then issued a subpoena to a specialty manufacturing company called That's My Face. This online business allowed customers to upload photographs of an individual, which the company would then use to construct a highly realistic, custom-molded latex mask of that person's face. The records returned from the company revealed a transaction under a name associated with Paul Hicks' social media accounts. The order included several high-resolution photographs of Kelly's face, which had been taken directly from her personal social media profiles. A separate search of financial records revealed the purchase of a high-quality, curly blonde wig from a local specialty shop called Kay's Wigs. The style and color of the wig were identical to the hair displayed by the female accomplice. In the arson video, the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. Paul Hicks had orchestrated the destruction of his own property using a custom-made latex mask of his ex-girlfriend's face and a matching wig to frame her for the crime, hoping to secure sole custody of their son and financial relief from potential child support payments. The insurance company denied the claim, and when Paul Hicks filed a civil lawsuit for breach of contract, Allstate countersued him for fraud. The civil court ruled in favor of the insurance company, ordering Paul Hicks to pay a judgment of $400,000. Chapter 4: The Cold Case of Huron County. While the arson investigation was concluding in Goshen, a detective from the Huron County Sheriff's Office in northern Ohio contacted the local authorities. They had been following the news of Paul Hicks' arrest and noted a chilling connection to a cold case homicide from 2001. 24 years earlier, Paul Hicks' first wife, Regina Rowe Hicks, had been found dead in a pond in Huron County. At the time of her death, the couple was engaged in a contentious divorce and custody battle over their young son, Montana. Regina was described by her family as a vibrant, independent young woman who loved country music, worked on four-wheelers, and drove a distinctive white Camaro. In the summer of 2001, a fire had destroyed the couple's home. Following the receipt of $60,000 in insurance proceeds, Regina had used her portion of the funds to establish her independence, filing for divorce and purchasing her dream car. On a crisp October evening in 2001, Regina was scheduled to pick up her son from Paul, who was staying at the home of his best friend, Steve Gates. She never arrived to pick up her child, and she was never seen alive again. For days after her disappearance, a farmer riding an all-terrain vehicle near a Remote Pond noticed an unusual object submerged in the water.
The pond.
Investigation. Local divers recovered a white Camaro from the depths of the
pond.
Inside the vehicle, on the passenger side, they discovered the body of Regina Hicks. Her position within the vehicle was highly unusual. Her feet were tucked beneath the passenger side console, and the passenger seat was reclined.
The
driver's seat was pushed all the way back, indicating that someone of much larger stature than Regina had been operating the vehicle when it entered the water. An autopsy revealed 3 distinct blunt force injuries to the top of Regina's scalp, strikes that were sufficient to render her unconscious, but not to kill her. The presence of water and silt in her lungs confirmed that she was alive, though unconscious, when the vehicle was driven into the pond, ultimately dying of drowning. At the time, Paul Hicks had a seemingly airtight alibi provided by his best friend, Steve Gates, who claimed that Regina had never arrived at his property on the night of her disappearance, with no physical evidence linking Paul to the crime. The investigation grew cold, leaving Regina's mother, Losella, to spend the remainder of her life campaigning for justice until her death from cancer. Chapter 5. The Silence Broken. The catalyst for a breakthrough in the 24-year-old cold case was a true crime podcast hosted by a local commentator named Ashley Ford. The podcast brought renewed public attention to the mystery of Regina's death, naming Steve Gates as a key figure who had likely withheld information from the police. Fearing potential prosecution and facing mounting pressure from the community, Steve Gates contacted a defense attorney. His attorney reached out to the state's Special Investigations Unit, offering a full confession from Gates in exchange for absolute immunity from prosecution. The special prosecutors agreed to the deal, provided Gates' information was truthful and could be corroborated. During a highly emotional interview, Gates broke his 24-year silence. He revealed that on the night of October 18, 2001, Regina had indeed arrived at his property to pick up her son. An argument erupted between Regina and Paul in the driveway over custody and child support. Gates claimed that he did not want to get involved, so he retreated into his garage, turning on a tractor and a radio to drown out the sound of their shouting. When he emerged some minutes later, he saw Regina's white Camaro parked near the edge of the property. Paul Hicks was standing by the open passenger door. When Gates approached, he looked inside the vehicle and saw Regina's unconscious body slumped in the floorboard. Paul informed him that she was dead. Gates admitted that he panicked. Instead of calling for emergency services, he succumbed to Paul's demands. Paul drove the Camaro to the remote pond, while Gates followed in Paul's vehicle, with young Montana asleep in the back seat. Gates witnessed Paul drive the Camaro into the water, crawl out of the open driver's window, and submerge the vehicle with Regina inside. Armed with this dramatic eyewitness testimony, the authorities arrested Paul Hicks, charging him with the murder and kidnapping of Regina Hicks. The trial was a somber affair, attended by members of both Regina's and Paul's families. The prosecution presented the testimony of Steve Gates, along with corroborating evidence from Paul's sister, who recalled finding his muddy clothing floating in her bathtub on the night of Regina's disappearance. The defense argued that the state's case was built entirely on the word of a admitted liar who had secured an immunity deal to save himself. They pointed out the complete lack of physical evidence, such as deoxyribonucleic acid or fingerprints, linking Paul to the Camaro. After a short deliberation of less than 3 hours, the jury returned a verdict of guilty on both counts of murder and kidnapping.
Paul Hicks was sentenced to
life in prison, with a possibility of parole after 25 years. For Regina's surviving relatives, the verdict was a long-delayed victory, a testament to the memory of a young mother whose life was cut short, and to the persistence of those who refused to let her be forgotten. Book 3, The Footprints in the Virtual Fence. Chapter 1, Disappearance at Paradise Ranch. The rolling hills of Paso Robles, California, are famous for their scenic vineyards, majestic oak trees, and historic ranches. It is a destination where people seek tranquility, beauty, and the quiet rhythm of the Central Coast.
On a
warm weekend in May, this idyllic setting became the backdrop for a deeply unsettling mystery. Nancy Woodrum was a 62-year-old resident of Paso Robles who was deeply cherished by her community. She operated a popular local hair salon called the Strand, where she was known for her warmth, generosity, and ability to connect with her clients. She was a devout Jehovah's Witness who dedicated much of her free time to her faith and to helping others. Nancy lived alone on a secluded, picturesque property on El Faro Road known as Paradise Ranch. Her late husband, a contractor, had remodeled the ranch, turning it into a beautiful estate featuring a large main house and a smaller, charming guest cottage. Because the property was large, Nancy often rented the main house to vacationers. On Friday, May 4th, a group of more than 20 wedding guests checked into Paradise Ranch to celebrate a vineyard wedding over the weekend. The bride and her bridesmaids were staying in the guest quarters, while other family members occupied the main house. On Saturday morning, Nancy failed to appear for a scheduled Bible study with her friends. This was highly unusual for her, prompting a concerned neighbor to visit her cottage to check on her well-being. The neighbor found the front door of the cottage wide open. Inside, the television was blaring, and there was no sign of Nancy. Her purse, keys, cellular phone, and vehicles were all left behind on the property. Nancy's daughter, Amanda, arrived shortly thereafter. Upon entering the cottage, she noticed several alarming details: 2 large stains on the carpet, Nancy's bedding missing from the bed, and what appeared to be blood spatter on the walls and furniture. Amanda immediately contacted 911, reporting that her mother was missing. Under highly suspicious circumstances, the responding deputies from the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Office immediately recognized that the cottage was a a crime scene indicating that Nancy had been taken against her will. Chapter 2. The long list of suspects. Senior Deputy Clinton Cole was among the investigators assigned to the case. He arrived at Paradise Ranch to find a highly complex situation. With more than 20 wedding guests staying on the property, investigators had a large pool of potential suspects who had immediate access to Nancy's residence. The remote nature of Paradise Ranch meant that an outside intruder was less likely than someone already present on the estate. The detectives began interviewing every single wedding guest. The bride, who was sleeping in an adjacent room separated from Nancy's cottage by a single wall, reported that she had used earplugs and had heard absolutely nothing during the night. The investigators focused their attention on one particular wedding guest whose timeline on the night of the disappearance was inconsistent. While the rest of the party had attended a rehearsal dinner at a local winery, this guest claimed to have stayed behind at the ranch alone. When detectives attempted to follow up with him, he became defensive and refused to cooperate further. The investigators traveled to his home in Northern California, where they conducted a formal interview. Fortunately, the guest's wife was able to produce photographs from her phone, showing that he had indeed attended the rehearsal dinner, resolving the inconsistency. The guest cooperated fully, providing a sample of his deoxyribonucleic acid to clear his name. The investigators also looked into several contractors who had recently performed work at Paradise Ranch as Nancy was preparing to sell the property. Among them was Sean Bloom, a contractor with whom Nancy had recently had a heated dispute over unfinished work and unpaid fees. Bloom had threatened legal action against Nancy, giving him a potential motive. He was interviewed extensively and eventually provided a voluntary deoxyribonucleic acid sample, which did not match the physical evidence recovered from the crime scene. A third avenue of investigation involved Nancy's estranged son, Chad. The relationship between mother and son had been strained for several years due to personal and religious differences. On the night before her disappearance, Nancy and Chad had exchanged several text messages. When detectives approached Chad, he expressed a deep distrust of law enforcement and refused to provide a voluntary sample of his deoxyribonucleic acid. The detectives placed Chad under surveillance, eventually recovering several empty beverage containers he had discarded in a public place. The laboratory analysis of his deoxyribonucleic acid cleared him of any involvement in his mother's disappearance. Chapter 3. The Geofence Breakthrough. As the weeks turned into months, the investigation began to stall. The sheriff's department had conducted extensive physical searches of the surrounding foothills, riverbeds, and roadsides, utilizing search and rescue teams, K-9 units, and helicopters, but they found no trace of Nancy Woodrum. The forensic laboratory had successfully isolated an unknown male deoxyribonucleic acid profile from a bloody handprint discovered on a pillow in Nancy's bedroom. The profile was entered into the national database, but it yielded no matches, indicating that the perpetrator had no prior felony convictions. Faced with a lack of traditional leads, the detectives decided to employ a relatively new and sophisticated investigative tool, a Google geofence warrant. This technology allows law enforcement to establish a virtual boundary around a specific geographic area during a precise time frame. The investigators targeted a window of time surrounding 12 o'clock and 17 minutes in the morning. On the night of the disappearance, the exact moment a 911 call had been attempted from Nancy's phone but was abruptly terminated after 0 seconds. Google complied with the warrant, returning a set of anonymized device identifiers that had been active within the virtual boundary during the specified time frame. Most of the devices were quickly linked to the cellular phones of the wedding guests. However, one device identifier stood out. It had pinged inside Nancy's cottage at approximately 1 o'clock and 33 minutes in the morning, and again at 1 o'clock and 52 minutes. The investigators submitted a follow-up warrant to obtain the subscriber information for that specific device. The results returned a name that sent a chill through the department: Carlo Fuentes Flores. Carlo Fuentes Flores was a local painter who had been hired to paint the exterior decks of the main house at Paradise Ranch. He was a quiet, mild-mannered man, a husband and father with no prior criminal record in either the United States or Mexico. When detectives had initially contacted him during their routine canvass of workers, he had been polite and helpful, expressing sadness over Nancy's disappearance. There had been no reason to suspect him until now. Chapter 4. The Dual Identity. With the geofence data placing Carlo's phone at the scene of the crime in the middle of the night, the detectives began a deep dive into his background. They obtained a warrant for his Google search history and account data, revealing a stark contrast to his public persona as a dedicated family man. His search history was replete with queries for explicit adult videos featuring older women, matching the demographic profile of Nancy Woodrum. The investigators also uncovered numerous video recordings on his phone of a highly personal nature, shot during encounters with various women, revealing a secret life of infidelity and obsession. To secure an arrest warrant, the detectives needed to match Carlo's deoxyribonucleic acid to the profile recovered from the bloody pillow. They initiated a discreet surveillance operation, following him to a local restaurant, where he had lunch with his family. After Carlo departed, an investigator retrieved a plastic soda bottle he had used during the meal. The laboratory compared the saliva on the bottle to the deoxyribonucleic acid from the crime scene. It was a perfect match. Carlo Fuentes Flores was brought to the sheriff's station for questioning. The interrogation was conducted in English, a language Carlo spoke fluently with his wife and colleagues. Initially, Carlo denied any involvement, claiming he only knew Nancy from his painting work on the property. The detectives allowed him to establish his narrative, showing him photographs of the ranch and confirming his familiarity with the layout. Then they presented the forensic evidence. They informed him that they had his location data, placing his phone in Nancy's cottage at 1 o'clock in the morning, and that his deoxyribonucleic acid had been recovered from her blood-stained pillow. Carlo's physical demeanor changed instantly. He realized that the evidence against him was insurmountable. He looked at the detectives and said, "I made a mistake." He initially claimed that he had returned to the property in the middle of the night to retrieve a ladder for his next job. While backing up his vehicle, he claimed he accidentally struck Nancy, who had walked behind his truck. He asserted that he took her inside her cottage to help her, where she ultimately expired. The detectives did not accept this highly improbable explanation. They pressed him on the details, pointing out the blood spatter in the bedroom and the nature of the injuries. Eventually, Carlo confessed to the full truth. He admitted that he had gone to the property with the explicit intention of assaulting Nancy, having developed an obsession with her. He entered her cottage, assaulted and raped her, and then suffocated her with her own pillow to prevent her from identifying him. Chapter 5: The Carrizo Plain. During his confession, Carlo offered to lead the investigators to the location where he had disposed of Nancy's body. He was placed in a police vehicle and directed the detectives due east from Paso Robles. The journey lasted nearly an hour, leading deep into the remote, arid landscape of the Carrizo Plain near the border of Kern County. The terrain was vast, open, and featureless, raising concerns that he would be unable to find the precise spot. Carlo directed them to a small dirt pull-off along a deserted road. The detectives began a foot search of the area, battling the cold wind of the high desert. After walking several circles through the brush, Deputy Cole noticed a small pile of rocks that looked out of place among the natural topography. Upon closer inspection, the investigators recovered the skeletal remains of Nancy Woodrum, which had been scattered by animal activity over the preceding months. Carlo fell to his knees and began to weep, expressing remorse for what he called his huge mistake. Carlo was arrested and charged with first-degree murder with the special circumstances of rape and burglary. Before the trial could begin, his defense team filed a motion to suppress his confession, arguing that because Carlo was a native Spanish speaker, his Miranda warnings should have been administered in Spanish. The prosecution presented evidence that Carlo had lived and worked in the United States for many years, spoke English fluently in his daily life, and had clearly indicated his understanding of his rights during the recorded interview. The judge denied the motion to suppress. Faced with the prospect of a trial and the potential for a death sentence, Carlo's defense negotiated a slow plea. Under this arrangement, the defense waived the jury trial, allowing the judge to review all of the evidence, including the confession and the recorded jail calls to his wife, where he admitted his guilt. The judge found Carlo Fuentes Flores guilty of first-degree murder with special circumstances, sentencing him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Amanda and her family, the recovery of her mother's remains and the Conviction of her killer brought a measure of peace. They held a beautiful memorial service at a local vineyard, celebrating the life of a woman who had faced immense personal tragedy with faith, grace, and an unwavering love for her family. Book 4. The Grief Author's Dark Secret. Chapter 1. Death in the Mountains. The mountain communities of Summit County, Utah, are synonymous with luxury, natural beauty, and outdoor recreation. Nestled near the world-class ski resorts of Park City, Heber City, and Midway are home to stunning estates where successful professionals seek a quiet, upscale lifestyle. In this affluent enclave, a sudden death would expose a web of financial ruin, marital discord, and calculated murder. Eric Richens was a 39-year-old resident of Summit County who had achieved remarkable success. He owned and operated a highly prosperous stone masonry business, C&E Masonry, which was valued in the millions. Eric was a devoted father to his 3 young sons, a passion he balanced with his love for the outdoors, hunting, and working on his family's cattle ranch. Eric was married to Corey Richens, a 33-year-old real estate agent who operated her own property flipping business, K. Richens Realty. By all public appearances, the couple lived an enviable life, raising their children in a beautiful home, taking lavish vacations, and managing 2 successful businesses. On the night of March 3, 2022, Corey claimed that she and Eric were celebrating a major milestone. She had recently negotiated the purchase of a historic, unfinished $2,900,000 mansion in Midway, which she planned to complete and flip for a substantial profit. According to Corey, she prepared a mixed drink for Eric to toast their success before retiring to bed. Later that night, she claimed she went to sleep in her youngest son's bedroom because the child was suffering from night terrors. At approximately 3 o'clock in the morning, Corey called 911 in a state of panic. She reported that she had returned to her husband's bedroom to find him cold to the touch and unresponsive. The responding emergency medical technicians and deputies arrived to find Eric lying on his back on the bedroom floor. They attempted cardiopulmonary resuscitation, but their efforts were in vain. Eric was pronounced deceased at the scene. Initially, because of Eric's young age and athletic build, investigators suspected he might have suffered a sudden medical emergency, such as a brain aneurysm. However, a preliminary toxicological analysis would soon reveal a far more sinister reality. Chapter 2. The Grief Book and the Anonymous Email. In the months following her husband's death, Corey Richens presented herself to the community as a grieving widow seeking to help her children cope with their sudden loss. She wrote and self-published a children's book titled Are You With Me? Designed to help young children navigate the difficult emotions of grief. The book, which featured illustrations of her family and a dedication to her late husband, was presented as a touching tribute to Eric's memory. Corey embarked on a promotional tour, appearing on local television and radio. Programs to discuss her book and her experiences as a young widow. On the air, she spoke with apparent vulnerability, describing the struggle of raising 3 young boys alone and the importance of finding ways to keep their father's presence alive in their daily routines. While Corey was receiving praise for her work, a different narrative was unfolding behind the scenes. A local television station received an anonymous email containing a single, stark line in capital letters: "She killed her husband." The official autopsy report had been finalized, and the results were shocking. The medical examiner concluded that Eric Richins had not died of natural causes or an aneurysm. His cause of death was acute fentanyl intoxication. The toxicological screen revealed that Eric had more than 5 times the lethal limit of illicitly manufactured fentanyl in his system. This was not medical-grade fentanyl prescribed by a doctor, but rather the highly potent, illicit variant typically associated with street-level distribution. The discovery of a lethal drug overdose in a man who had no history of substance abuse immediately transformed the death investigation into a homicide inquiry. The Summit County Sheriff's Office obtained search warrants for Corey's home, vehicles, and electronic devices. They discovered that the marriage, far from being the perfect partnership displayed on social media, had been under immense financial strain. Eric's family revealed that in 2020, Eric had discovered that Corey had secretly taken out a $250,000 line of credit against their primary residence, which was solely owned by Eric. This discovery had shattered Eric's trust in his wife, prompting him to consult with a divorce attorney and quietly alter his estate planning. Eric had established a private trust, naming his sister as the trustee and making his 3 sons the sole beneficiaries. He had also moved the family home into the trust, ensuring that Corey would have no direct access to his primary assets in the event of his death. Chapter 3: The Valentine's Bagel and the House Cleaner. As detectives dug deeper into Corey's financial records, they realized she was facing a catastrophic financial crisis. She had accumulated millions of dollars in debt through high-interest, short-term, hard money loans to fund her ambitious real estate projects, including the unfinished Midway Mansion. With Eric's estate shielded by his private trust, Corey was facing imminent foreclosure and financial ruin. The investigators also uncovered a pattern of suspicious health incidents involving Eric in the years leading up to his death. During a trip to Greece in 2019, Eric had become violently ill. After consuming a drink prepared by Corey, he had contacted his sister, expressing a fear that Corey was attempting to poison him. A more recent incident occurred on Valentine's Day, 2022. Just weeks before his death, Corey had purchased a bagel sandwich from a local deli and left it for Eric with a loving note. After taking a single bite of the sandwich, Eric suffered a severe allergic reaction, requiring the use of his son's epinephrine autoinjector and a heavy dose of antihistamines to survive. He had texted a friend afterward, writing, "I think my wife tried to poison me." The breakthrough in the homicide investigation came from the analysis of Corey's cellular phone records. The investigators identified frequent communication between Corey and a woman named Carmen Lauber. Lauber was a house cleaner who had worked on several of Corey's real estate properties and possessed a significant criminal history involving drug-related offenses. The sheriff's office executed a search warrant at Lauber's residence, recovering drug paraphernalia, an unauthorized firearm, and a copy of Eric Richens' obituary taped to a mirror. Faced with substantial prison time, Lauber agreed to cooperate with the prosecution. She revealed that Corey had approached her on 2 separate occasions in early 2022, requesting that she procure strong prescription pain medication for a client with a back injury. Lauber admitted that she had purchased illicit fentanyl pills from a local distributor named Robert Crozier and delivered them to Corey. The timing of these deliveries was highly incriminating. The first delivery occurred just days before Eric's Valentine's Day illness, and the second delivery of stronger pills took place on February 26th, mere days before Eric's fatal overdose. Chapter 4: The Handyman and the Affair. The investigators also uncovered a secret romantic life that further established a motive for murder. Through the analysis of Corey's text messages, they discovered that she had been engaged in a years-long, highly passionate affair with a local handyman named Josh Grossman, who worked on her renovation projects. The text exchanges between Corey and Grossman revealed a deep-seated desire to escape her marriage. Corey had repeatedly expressed her love for Grossman, writing about a future where they would live together at the Midway Mansion, operating an event center, and raising children together. In one text sent less than 48 hours before Eric's death, Corey urged Grossman to hang in there until Friday, promising that life is going to be different, I promise. On May 8th, 2023, Corey Richens was arrested and charged with aggravated murder and several counts of possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute. While held in the Summit County Jail, Corey's situation worsened. During a routine search of her cell, corrections officers recovered a 4-page handwritten letter tucked inside a book. The letter, which began with the phrase, "Walk the dog," was addressed to her mother. In the letter, Corey instructed her mother to contact her brother and direct him to provide false testimony. She requested that her brother claim that Eric had obtained pain medication and fentanyl from workers on his family's ranch in Mexico, attempting to establish an alternative explanation for the source of the drugs. The prosecution immediately filed additional charges of witness tampering against Corey, using the letter as clear evidence of consciousness of guilt. Corey's defense team argued that the letter was merely a draft of a fictional manuscript she was writing and that the prosecution's entire case was built on circumstantial evidence and the testimony of compromised witnesses who had secured plea deals. Chapter 5: The Trial of the Grieving Widow. The trial of Corey Richens began in a packed courtroom in Summit County. The Prosecution presented a meticulous case detailing her massive financial liabilities, her secret affair, the testimony of Carmen Lauber, and the incriminating internet searches recovered from her phone. The search history, conducted after she became aware of the police investigation, included queries for luxury prisons for the rich. Can police uncover deleted messages on iPhone? And what is a lethal dose of fentanyl? The defense focused on the lack of direct physical evidence. They pointed out that despite extensive searches of the home, investigators had never recovered any physical traces of fentanyl or the container used to administer the drug to
Eric.
They suggested that Eric, struggling with his own health issues, may have accidentally self-administered the lethal dose. The most emotional moment of the trial came when Josh Grossman took the stand. The handyman appeared deeply distressed, weeping as his private, highly intimate text messages with Corey were displayed on a large screen in the courtroom. Grossman testified that shortly after Eric's death, he and Corey had taken a drive together. During the conversation, Corey had asked him if he had ever killed anyone during his military service in Iraq and how it had made him feel, a question that left him deeply unsettled in light of subsequent events. In a dramatic legal maneuver, after the prosecution rested its 13-day case, Corey's defense attorneys stood up and announced that the defense would rest without calling a single witness. They believed that the prosecution had failed to meet the high burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and that presenting witnesses would only expose their client to further scrutiny. The jury deliberated for just under 3 hours. When they returned to the courtroom, the foreperson read the verdicts.
Corey.
Richens was found guilty on all counts, including aggravated murder and attempted murder. Corey stood in silence, her confident facade entirely gone as the reality of her convictions set in. She was subsequently sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The custody of her 3 young sons, the central focus of so much conflict, was permanently terminated. The boys were adopted by one of Eric's sisters, ensuring they would grow up in a stable, loving environment surrounded by their fathers. Family. For the community of Summit County and the friends of Eric Richens, the verdict brought a profound sense of relief. The man who had lived his life with passion, integrity, and a deep love for his family had finally received the justice he deserved, while the woman who had sought to profit from his death was held fully accountable for her actions. Conclusion: the endurance of justice. The resolution of these 4 cases demonstrates that while the plans of those who commit crimes may appear sophisticated, they are ultimately fragile when confronted with the persistent forces of truth and justice. Whether through the digital footprints left in a virtual fence, the recovery of a deleted phone record, the meticulous tracing of a fabricated latex mask, or the exposing of a calculated betrayal masked as grief, the truth has a way of rising to the surface. These stories stand as a tribute to the memory of Robert Dorr, Regina Hicks, Nancy Woodrum, and Eric Richens, lives of value that were cut short but whose legacies endure. They also honor the quiet, tireless efforts of the investigators, prosecutors, and community members who refuse to let their voices be silenced, proving that even in the face of deep deception, justice will ultimately prevail. The pursuit of justice is rarely a swift or straight path. More often, it is a quiet, painstaking journey through the tangled labyrinth of human behavior, where the loudest truths are frequently buried beneath layers of deception, silence, and false appearances. In the quiet corners of the country, away from the bustling neon lights of major metropolises, communities expect safety and
peace.
Yet, it is within these tranquil landscapes that some of the most baffling and deeply personal crimes occur, when the dark impulses of greed, jealousy, and malice disrupt these sanctuaries. It falls upon the shoulders of dedicated investigators, patient forensic scientists, and determined families to reconstruct the fractured pieces of the truth. Through their efforts, we are reminded of the resilience of the human spirit and the quiet, persistent power of the law to restore order to a shattered world. The first movement of this chronicle begins in the golden, rolling hills of Paso Robles, California, nestled halfway between the sprawling urban expanses of San Francisco and Los Angeles. Paso Robles is a place of scenic quietude. Its Spanish name, El Paso de Robles, translates to the Pass of the Oaks, a fitting description for a landscape defined by ancient, sweeping oak trees, grazing cattle, pristine horse ranches, and neat rows of grapevines that make it a premier destination for wineries. To many, it is a fairy tale escape. But down El Faro Road, in the heart of this rustic beauty, a sudden and chilling silence fell on a spring weekend in 2018. Nancy Woodrum was a 62-year-old woman who embodied the warm, industrious spirit of the Paso Robles community after her husband passed away several years prior. She lived alone in a modest, ranch-style cottage on her property, a scenic acreage she and her late husband had purchased in 2006.
They
had worked tirelessly to transform the fixer-upper into a beautiful estate, featuring a grand, two-story Victorian-style rental home with wraparound porches, shaded by a massive willow tree. Nancy, a devout member of the Jehovah's Witnesses, named the property Paradise Ranch, a reflection of her deeply held faith and her hope for a peaceful, restored world. In the downtown district of Paso Robles, Nancy was a beloved fixture.
She owned
and operated a popular hair salon called The Strand. Clients did not merely visit Nancy for her professional skill with shears and color. They came for her radiant warmth, her generous spirit, and her open heart. This gift of connection was something she shared with her daughter, Amanda, who worked alongside her as a stylist. The bond between mother and daughter was exceptionally close, forged through shared passions for hairdressing, horseback riding through the quiet trails of the Central Coast, and their shared religious devotion. To fund her goal of dedicated, full-time ministry, Nancy had recently decided to sell Paradise Ranch. The sprawling estate was becoming too much for a single woman to maintain. In preparation for the sale, she hired various local contractors, painters, and handymen to make necessary repairs and enhancements to the property. On Friday, the 4th of May, 2018, a large group of wedding guests checked into the main Victorian house at Paradise Ranch. They had traveled to Paso Robles to celebrate a vineyard wedding. The bride, who was staying in the smaller guest cottage on the property, met Nancy shortly after arrival. Nancy welcomed her with a warm embrace and kind words, mentioning that she would be staying nearby in her own private studio apartment on the ranch if they needed anything. The wedding festivities proceeded as planned, but by Saturday morning, a quiet alarm began to spread. Amanda received a phone call from a member of their congregation. Nancy had failed to show up for a scheduled morning Bible study, an absence that was entirely unprecedented for a woman of her disciplined devotion. Concerned, Amanda asked a neighbor to walk over to Nancy's cottage to check on her. The neighbor's report was chilling. The front door of the cottage was standing wide open. Inside, the television was blaring to an empty room. Amanda rushed to the property. As she approached her mother's cottage, the sense of dread deepened. The space was exactly as her mother had left it, yet Nancy was nowhere to be found. In the bedroom, Amanda noticed a dark, ominous stain on the carpet. The sheets and comforter had been stripped from the bed and were missing. On the walls, she spotted what appeared to be small droplets of blood. Clutching her phone with shaking hands, she dialed 911. The local emergency dispatch received the call. A frantic daughter reported her mother missing under highly suspicious circumstances. Within minutes, the tranquil atmosphere of Paradise Ranch was shattered by the arrival of sirens, flashing lights, and yellow crime scene tape. Among the first to respond was Clinton Cole, then a senior deputy with the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Office. Upon arriving at El Faro Road, Cole met with the responding deputies who expressed immediate concern. The scene inside the cottage was highly alarming. There was no sign of forced entry on the open front door, suggesting the intruder had either walked in unopposed or that Nancy had opened the door herself. On the floor lay two large, fresh pools of blood. On a nearby bench sat Nancy's purse, her car keys, her cellular phone, and her tablet computer. Her two vehicles remained parked outside. In the bedroom, a beige pillow on the bed bore a heavy saturation of blood. Tiny droplets of blood spatter were visible on a nearby cabinet, the headboard, and the adjacent wall. To an experienced investigator like Cole, the scene spoke with tragic clarity. Nancy Woodrum had been subjected to a violent physical assault inside her own bedroom and had been taken from the home against her will. The investigation was immediately confronted with a daunting challenge. Returning to the property that Saturday evening were more than 20 wedding guests who had been staying in the main house and guest cottage. In the eyes of the law, Every single one of these individuals had to be treated as a potential person of interest. They had ready access to the property, and their presence coincided directly with Nancy's disappearance. The bride, returning from her wedding preparations, was met with a chaotic scene of police dogs, search helicopters, and barricades. She was horrified to learn of Nancy's disappearance. She explained to detectives that she had been sleeping in the guest cottage, separated from Nancy's apartment by only a single shared wall. Despite the proximity, she had heard absolutely nothing during the night, having worn earplugs to ensure a restful sleep before her wedding day. Detectives began the tedious process of interviewing every guest. Most had spent Friday evening at a rehearsal dinner at a local winery, returning late and retiring to bed by midnight. However, one male guest could not initially be accounted for during the dinner. When interviewed, his answers were vague and he displayed a marked reluctance to cooperate with the investigators, eventually refusing to speak further without legal counsel. This defensive posture naturally raised red flags. Detectives tracked the uncooperative guest to his residence in Northern California to conduct a follow-up interview, away from the high-stress environment of the active crime scene. The man's demeanor changed. He became cooperative and apologetic, explaining that his previous hesitation was born of anxiety. His wife provided photographs from her cellular phone, clearly showing him at the rehearsal dinner during the hours in question. To completely resolve any lingering doubt, the guest voluntarily provided a sample of his deoxyribonucleic acid. He was officially ruled out. As the search for Nancy intensified, search and rescue teams combed the dry riverbeds, rugged foothills, and dense brush surrounding El Faro Road. Meanwhile, a critical piece of evidence was discovered by an officer with the California Highway Patrol on La Ponza Road, approximately 6 miles from Paradise Ranch. A bundle of bedding and clothing had been discarded on the roadside. The items consisted of a sheet, a pillow, a dress, a pair of shorts, and a shirt. Forensic analysts at the Sheriff's Department Crime Laboratory examined the items and noted heavy blood staining. The distinctive pattern of the sheets matched the remaining bedding left in Nancy's cottage. Amanda confirmed that the clothing belonged to her mother. The discovery suggested that Nancy had been wrapped in her own bedding, placed in a vehicle, and transported away from the ranch, either severely injured or deceased. With the wedding guests cleared, investigators turned their attention to the local workers who had recently been on the property. Among them was Sean Bloom, a general contractor who had managed several renovations on the estate. Amanda informed detectives that her mother and Bloom had engaged in a highly contentious financial dispute. Nancy had been dissatisfied with his work and had terminated his services, withholding payment until the closing of the property's escrow. Bloom had reportedly reacted with anger, threatening legal action to secure his funds. When interviewed, Bloom made no attempt to conceal his intense dislike for Nancy, freely sharing the frustrated text messages he had sent her. However, he cooperated fully with the inquiry and voluntarily provided a deoxyribonucleic acid sample. The laboratory analysis quickly cleared him of any physical involvement. Detectives then faced the painful necessity of examining Nancy's immediate family. Rumors had surfaced of a deep and long-standing estrangement between Nancy and her son, Chad. Growing up, Chad had rejected the family's religious faith, a decision that had introduced severe tension into his relationship with his mother. At the time of her disappearance, they had not spoken face to face in 5 years, and Nancy was not permitted to see her grandchildren. Strangely, cellular phone records revealed that Nancy had sent a text message to Chad on the evening of Friday, the 4th of May, attempting to find some common ground. It was the final outgoing message on her phone. When approached by investigators, Chad was visibly defensive, expressing a deep-seated distrust of law enforcement and flatly refusing to provide a biological sample. Detectives placed him under discreet surveillance. After observing him consume several beverages at a local establishment, deputies initiated a traffic stop and arrested him for driving with an open container. The discarded beverage containers in his vehicle were gathered and sent to the crime laboratory. The resulting analysis cleared Chad of any connection to the crime scene. At this juncture, the investigation began to stall. Every prominent lead had been exhausted. It was during this period of frustration that forensic technicians made a significant breakthrough on the biological evidence, using a ladder to examine the bloody pillow from Nancy's bed from an overhead perspective. A technician identified the faint, partial impression of a bloody handprint on the clean side of the pillow. The placement suggested the pillow had been held down over the victim's face to suffocate her. Forensic analysts successfully extracted an unknown male deoxyribonucleic acid profile from the center of this handprint. The profile was entered into the national database, the Combined Deoxyribonucleic Acid Index System, but it yielded no matches. The perpetrator had no prior felony record. Recognizing that traditional investigative avenues had reached a dead end, the Sheriff's Department decided to employ a cutting-edge digital investigative tool that was virtually unprecedented in the state of California at the time: a Google geofence warrant. Geofencing allows investigators to establish a virtual boundary around a specific geographic coordinate during a precise window of time. Google then searches its vast databases for any active mobile devices that utilize location services within that boundary. Because of a crucial detail on Nancy's cellular phone records, an attempted 911 call made from her phone at exactly midnight 17 on the night of her disappearance, which was instantly terminated after 0 seconds. Detectives had a highly accurate timeline of the
crime.
When the geofencing data was returned from Google, investigators began the meticulous process of filtering the device identifiers. Amid the devices belonging to the sleeping wedding guests, they spotted a highly unusual anomaly. A single, unidentified mobile device had active location pings inside Nancy's private studio cottage at 1:33 in the morning and again at 1:52 in the morning. Detectives issued a follow-up subpoena to identify the subscriber associated with that specific device. When the name was returned, it sent a shockwave through the department. The device belonged to Carlo Fuentes Flores. Fuentes Flores was a local painter who had been hired to paint the exterior decks of the main Victorian house at Paradise Ranch. He was a quiet, mild-mannered man, a husband, and a devoted father who had immigrated to the United States from Mexico. He had worked for local contractors for nearly 20 years and was widely regarded as a polite, professional, and exceptionally neat craftsman. Detectives had actually spoken with him briefly during the initial canvass of workers. He had been friendly and cooperative, mentioning how kind Nancy had been to him, even recalling that she had once made him tamales as a gesture of appreciation for his hard work. He had shown no outward signs of guilt or anxiety. Now, however, his cellular phone placed him inside Nancy's home in the dark, early hours of the morning, long after any professional painting services could be justified. Investigators began a comprehensive review of Fuentes Flores's background and digital footprint. Although he possessed no criminal record, a deep dive into his Google search history revealed a startling double life beneath his exterior. As a quiet family man lay dark, secretive compulsions, his search history was filled with queries for escorts in various cities and explicit adult videos featuring older women. Furthermore, investigators discovered multiple self-recorded videos on his device depicting him engaging in sexual encounters with various women. It became clear that Fuentes Flores harbored a hidden, hypersexual persona that contrasts sharply with his daytime reputation. To secure an arrest, investigators required physical confirmation linking him to the biological evidence on the pillow. The Sheriff's Special Operations Unit initiated physical surveillance on Fuentes Flores when he dined at a local restaurant with his wife. Investigators watched him drink from a plastic soda bottle. After the couple departed, an investigator gathered the discarded bottle from the table. The laboratory compared the biological material from the bottle to the deoxyribonucleic acid extracted from the bloody handprint on Nancy's pillow. It was an exact match. On an afternoon in late November, detectives escorted Carlo Fuentes Flores into an interrogation room at the sheriff's department. They began the interview gently, asking routine questions about his painting work at Paradise Ranch, establishing his familiarity with the property and his knowledge of where Nancy resided. Fuentes Flores maintained his polite, cooperative demeanor, claiming he had no knowledge of what had happened to Nancy beyond what his employer had told him. The detectives slowly increased the pressure. They asked him directly if he had any involvement in Nancy's disappearance. Fuentes Flores denied it, his expression calm. Then, the lead investigator revealed their hand. He informed Fuentes Flores that science had placed him in the room, that his deoxyribonucleic acid was present. on the very pillow used in the assault, and that digital tracking placed his phone inside the cottage at the exact hour of the crime. The psychological shift was instantaneous.
Fuentes Flores Polite Fesad.
Crumbled. His breathing became shallow, and he looked down, visibly trembling. He admitted that he had made a terrible mistake. He initially attempted to present the death as a tragic accident. He claimed that he had returned to the property late at night to retrieve a ladder for an upcoming job. As he was backing his truck up in the dark, he claimed he accidentally struck Nancy, who had walked out behind his vehicle. In a panic, he said he carried her inside the cottage to help her, where she subsequently collapsed and died. The investigators did not accept this highly improbable explanation. The blood spatter on the walls and the handprint on the pillow contradicted any theory of a low-speed vehicular accident. They pressed him further, questioning him about the sexual nature of the crime. Fuentes Flores eventually conceded that his visit was not motivated by a forgotten ladder. He had consumed a significant amount of alcohol and had driven to the property with the explicit intent of forcing himself upon Nancy, whom he believed had been flirting with him when she offered him food. He admitted to entering her cottage, brutally assaulting her when she awoke, sexually abusing her, and then holding the pillow over her face for several minutes until she stopped moving, ensuring she could never identify him. When questioned about the location of Nancy's remains, Fuentes Flores offered to guide detectives to the site. They placed him in an unmarked police vehicle and drove due east, embarking on a somber, hour-long journey that led them out of the oak-lined hills of Paso Robles and into the arid, vast emptiness of the Carrizo Plain. The search in the fading light was difficult. Fuentes Flores's memory was hazy, and he stopped at several incorrect locations, causing anxiety to mount among the accompanying officers. But at a remote, desolate spot off the roadway, Detective Cole spotted a small, unnatural pile of stones. Upon closer inspection, the grim reality was revealed. Scattered by wildlife, the skeletal remains of Nancy Woodrum were recovered. In January of 2022, rather than face a public trial, Fuentes Flores agreed to a slow plea, a legal proceeding where the prosecution presents its evidence directly to a judge, who then renders a verdict. The judge found him guilty of first-degree murder with the special circumstance of committing the murder during the commission of a rape. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Though the legal proceedings concluded, the void left by Nancy's absence remained vast. Amanda and her daughter continue the family tradition of horseback riding, finding solace in the quiet trails of Paso Robles, carrying with them the memory of a woman whose faith, kindness, and love could never be extinguished by the dark actions of a single night. The second movement of this chronicle takes us away from the golden valleys of California and into the snow-draped valleys of Summit County, Utah. Here, nestled in the shadows of the majestic Wasatch Mountains, is calm as a quiet, tight-knit mountain community located near the affluent resort town of Park
City.
In this landscape of rugged beauty and wealth, a young family appeared to be living the ultimate expression of the American dream. Eric Richens was a 39-year-old native of Utah, a man of deep faith, immense physical vitality, and an extraordinary work ethic. Raised on a cattle ranch, Eric grew up with a deep love for the outdoors, big game hunting, and physical labor. He established a highly successful stonemasonry business, C&E Masonry, which grew into a $1 million enterprise. A devoted member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Eric had served a 2-year mission in Mexico City in his youth, instilling in him a lifelong commitment to his faith and his family. He was married to Corey Richens, a charismatic, ambitious young woman who had grown up in a hardworking family that moved frequently for construction work. As a teenager in Heber City, Corey was known as a tough, protective friend, a cheerleader, and an active athlete. The couple had met when Corey was working as a cashier at a Home Depot in Park City, where Eric frequently purchased supplies. The chemistry was immediate, and they soon married, eventually welcoming 3 sons in quick succession. To the outside world, the Richens family was picture perfect.
They lived in a
beautiful, expansive home, took lavish vacations, and were deeply involved in their sons' lives, with Eric coaching soccer and Corey serving as a dedicated Cub Scout leader. But beneath the polished exterior of their affluent life, severe financial and marital tensions were beginning to fester. Corey was not content with being a stay-at-home mother. She possessed a fierce ambition to build her own real estate empire. In 2019, she launched K. Richens Realty, a home flipping and real estate business. Her projects expanded rapidly, and she was soon managing 15 different renovations simultaneously. Corey's ultimate dream was to purchase a distressed, incomplete 6-bedroom mansion in Midway, Utah, valued at nearly $3 million, complete the construction, and sell it for a massive profit or utilize it as a luxury wedding venue. However, Corey's ambitious business model was built on a fragile foundation of high-risk, short-term, high-interest loans. Unbeknownst to Eric, Corey's debt was spiraling out of control, reaching millions of dollars. In 2020, Eric made a shocking discovery. Corey had secretly taken out a $250,000 line of credit against their family home, which Eric solely owned. She had also forged a signature on financial documents and systematically depleted his business accounts to fund her real estate ventures. Deeply betrayed, Eric consulted with a divorce attorney and began taking quiet steps to protect his assets and his children. He established a private family trust, naming his sister Katie as the trustee and executor of his estate, and explicitly designating his 3 sons as the sole beneficiaries of his life, insurance, and property. While Eric and Corey underwent marital counseling and chose to remain together for the sake of their children, the trust between them was permanently shattered. On the night of March 3rd, 2022, Corey claimed they were celebrating a major milestone. She had finally signed the contract to purchase the Midway Mansion, a transaction